Hey everyone, welcome back to a little Jays talk. You guessed it, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is back in the headlines for talking about his upcoming free agency. This time he's talking about how he will entertain all MLB squads, including the Yankees, yet again. But the more interesting note was him saying off of a bad year he's still worth $500 million as his floor. And that got me kind of thinking that he might be receiving some bad advice. I don't know if he's just posturing, trying to get an offer from the Blue Jays, just to kind of pressure them into getting a deal done. That's hopeful, me speaking. But if not, the guy might be a little bit delusional. I guess it's whatever anyone's willing to pay. But just coming off of a bad year, which by Vladdy's standards is probably about a 25, I would say 25 home run, 90 RBI, mid to upper 200 batting average, maybe a 270 average, something like that, where you're talking about probably an all-star, borderline all-star first baseman, but nothing exceptional, definitely not a unicorn or a generational type talent that $500 million you would think would buy you. And a couple of the guys on the list that kind of fit that profile, obviously they're all older and age does factor into this, but you're much more along the lines of the Pete Alonso, Eugenio Suarez, Josh Naylors, kind of guys like that. Even Ian Happ and Taylor Ward fall into that kind of level of productivity. So while it's still very good and very valuable to a team, there's a big drop off there from the very good players to the actual unicorn Soto and Otani levels. And obviously he will get paid for his ceiling and his youth, so he will earn more than a lot of those guys in general just by being Vlad. But just to put into perspective where his productivity could lie in his more down years versus his peak years that he's reached. And, I think Pete Alonso is probably bit of a tale of caution. I should say a cautionary tale because, he's only about 30 years old and he himself struggled after a pretty prolific power output over the last few years. And he struggled to get anything more than a couple year deal from the Mets that he's able to opt out of. So I think that should be a warning sign to Vladdy about how the market does value first baseman sluggers, especially if they're not coming off of a crazy 950 to a 1,000 OPS type year. So yeah, that leads me to my Josh Naylor and Pete Alonso type comparisons and what they might get on the market. I don't think either one of those guys, even if Alonso hits the market again, they're looking at 3 to 5 years. In Naylor's case, probably 20 million AAV, something like that. Basically a glorified Anthony Santander contract if he keeps it up. That's probably best case scenario. And then in Pete Alonso's case, if he does opt out, he's probably sitting somewhere looking to get 3 or 4 more years locked in at around 30 million AAV. So you're really only looking at probably, we'll call it 4 to 5 years at 20 plus million to 30 million for the two of them if they're coming off fantastic seasons, and you're not having to pay for all of those years going up to 40 years old there where you're going to regret a lot of the seasons. So that's kind of a pivot that I could see happening. And I put this funny picture in here, the recreate him in aggregate from Billy Beane in Moneyball, because I want to give a little bit of hope to Jays fans. You're never going to replace Vladdy one for one, especially given his ceiling. But what you can do is have a look here at all the pending free agents. And there's just so many guys to pick from that can have productive offensive seasons and, give you 75% of that production. Like I mentioned, Naylor, Alonso, Kyle Schwarber will be available. Jock Peterson, Rhys Hoskins to lesser extents. Kyle Tucker's the only guy that can really challenge Vlad in AAV because he will get a 7 or 8 year monster deal, maybe even longer than that. He's a true one of those unicorn type players. But yeah, Tyler O'Neill's on the list there. There's some more guys. You can go on all day. But more interestingly is the money saved. You could go over to the pitching side and you've got Framber Valdez, Zach Gallen, Dylan Cease, Jack Flaherty, Ranger Suarez, Michael King. Some of these guys could be legitimate aces, and you saw the money the Blue Jays were willing to throw at Corbin Burns. So you got to keep in mind, Vladdy's money will come off the books. This is hypothetical that he doesn't get signed. Bo Bichette's money's coming off the books, and Chris Bassett is also coming off the books. So you have a lot of money coming off, and the Blue Jays will likely, obviously, work hard to re-sign all three of those guys if they're productive, specifically Vlad and Bo. But if they're unable to, you can really, as I mentioned, recreate them in the aggregate where you can go out and get a Josh Naylor and commit 4 or 5 years to a guy and get that 75% of the production out of him. And then shift over to your pitching staff and focus on, a Dylan Cease, a Framber Valdez. See how everyone pitches this year. Obviously, the asking prices and the comfortability with each guy would vary depending on how they do this year. But there's some really intriguing names there that you could throw a lot of money at and build an ace or a number 2, and you can go after a nice reliever. There's also a lot of nice relievers on the market that I won't even get into. But, if the Blue Jays are willing to keep spending the money, that's the key part. You can really be aggressive going after Bo. You can really be aggressive re-signing the guys that you like. You can work out extension deals with Kirk, Varsho, guys like that. And then you can get after another ace-level starting pitcher on the market and really keep a contender on the field with or without Vlad. And again, I love Vlad. I want to keep him. Best case scenario is we do, in fact, keep Vladdy long term. But I just wanted to give some, hope or some optimism that it doesn't necessarily have to end if Vlad does leave. Anyways, thank you guys for watching all the way through. It really helps with the algorithm. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any comments, be sure to drop them below because I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on this. How are we feeling about all the Vlad news and the persistence with him being, in the headlines? Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.